Namaskar and welcome to episode number 7. And we have heard from Dr. Yadav relating to the aspects of the temple studies for the last 2 odd episodes. Now, in this episode, we are going to take care about some of the scholars, right? And in fact, to start with, one of the major contributor was Michael Mister, and through his compilation of that of the temples in India, he has compiled that of the South Indian temples and also the North Indian temples in his book on the Encyclopedia of Indian Temples that was published by American Institute of Indian Studies. And that was one of the major work which has actually gave us the entire platter, in one document and in one book, which was one of the major landmark, our inter-temple studies.
So the role of Michael Mister is very high because he's a professor in the Pennsylvania University and working deeply and in the South Asian archaeology and history. And understanding of the Indian temples is very good. And Michael Mister is the key person when the American Institute of Indian Studies had started his prestigious project to compile the book and the Encyclopedia of Indian Temple Architecture. When this project was launched, so they have find out that 2-3 stalwarts, especially the Michael Mister was one of them, and the second is the Medhaki, and third one is the K. Deva. Mm-hmm. So all 3 scholars have contributed in different volumes, 4 volumes, 2 volumes for North India, 2 volumes for South India. They have published, and my understanding of Michael Mister is very high. We just published many articles and books. Especially the work that I can focus one very interesting article published on Masnad temples, with that which is compared with the temples of Cambodia, because
that's right.
That the Masnad is just like a prototype of Cambodia, because the concept of publication, the central Sankoram with the flank by the 4, this is a rocket temple. It is a is a monolithic temple. So the understanding of Michael Mister is at par. And side by side, the Amidaki, who is focusing more on the studies of the Western Indian temples, especially the Gujarat temples. And Amidaki contribution is known for his nomenclature as well as their decipherment on the further classification of the Western Indian temples, which is like Maharu style, Mahaburjak style, Gurjar Maru styles. All 3 styles were being nomenclature was given by Amidaki. And he first time given the theorized the evolution of the temples of like a Rekha Nagar or Latter style, because Latter is the geographical division is known as Saurashtra. So the Latter temple, because we call that Latin Shikhara was given by him, because Latter is a geographical division and the temples located in this area is known as the Latin temples. So the question is that these temples of Latter region and the Mahaburjara style was early temples up to the 6th or 7th century. They are very rustic in style, very austere in exterior as well as the interior, and very modest in size. But after 9th century onwards, the temple have gradually increased in volume, and especially known for the artistic creations over lavish the decoration on the exterior and interior part of the temple. That is known as the Mahaburjara style. These temples were flourished under the patterns of Solanki rulers. And the Hamaru style, which is covered the territories of or present territory of Rajasthan, that is known as the Nadulla or Nadulla Chamanas, and the Nirpatta or the Mewar region. So this entire region was Mewar, and Marwar area was known as Mahamaru style. This Mahamaru style is very much influenced with the West, but it was having some influence from the Pratihara art style, because the basic structure they have have some influence from the Pratihara architecture. And because like Ocean temples, Mahamaru style, they are very good. They are small in size, but they are very, very, very modest and very organic in composition. And the temple are right from the Vedipanda to Sikhara, they are the very organically built. And the influence of the Western India is less in the early temples, but if you go to the 10th or 11th century, when the climax came up, the temples were very much influenced with the Gurjar style. So that this area was under the control of the Chalukyas and during the 10th or 11th century AD. So this kind of influence is there. And when come to the Kedeva have contributed especially in the central India, and because he is a great scholar, so he have traveled across the country as an archaeologist. He started his career from Afghanistan and continued, served in the different part of the country entire his life. And when he was appointed as a superintending architect in TSP, Temple Survey Project in Bhopal, so he focused much on the studies of Central India, especially Khajuraho is his destination, and he published 2 volumes of Khajuraho. He documented thoroughly, and he was one of the major contributors for the encyclopedia, and he focused the temples of in the Gopadri region. Because the beauty of the encyclopedia is that because these scholars have very precisely focused in the geographical domain, especially what is the temple of geographical level like Gopadri and the Nirapatta region in the Rajasthan, the Shan region of the Bundelkhand region, and go the some Uparmal area, Malwa region. So all regions, their geographical regions have their own kind of architectural style, but the indigenous features was imbibed in their architecture. So the Kedeva have contributed as a chapters, especially on the North Indian side, and hilly styles, especially the hilly styles, very important style. One of the that known as the Gujarat. After Gujarat, is moved towards the North Kashmir and then come to the Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. These temples are also built from the 7th to 11th century AD, but they have their own regional styles as well. So after Kedeva, some more archaeologists and especially have contributed in the studies of temple architecture. And like P.K. Trivedi have also, who has studied the Pratihara temples of central India, is also published in the one of the ASI memoirs. So that was also focused on the Pratiharas, especially how the Pratihara temple have come and how it can be classified in the 3 categories and according to their evolution process. So these are the contribution of the early scholars in the field.
We have come to know a lot, right, from that of the days of Ramraj, and how the historical timelines got evolved, and also with that of this, how studies of temple has been done, in fact, on the Indian context by the Indians, then in fact the British Orientalists and other Europeans who came across with the Indian philosophy, the Indian culture. And which is also in a continuous progression. In fact, Archaeological Survey of India has also given their role with that of the temple survey of both North India and also of the South India. And we have also come to know about the various styles which are there, from that of the North Indian styles and that of the South Indian styles, and also how the institutionalization happened with that of the South India, and also with that of how the North Indian aspects were there. Now, in fact, if I ask you, sir, from this particular aspect, now who are the other contributors, in fact, in terms of the study of the temples in overall? Both, in fact, from the Indian context, I mean the person who is an Indian, and also other foreign collaborators who are also there. If you can highlight on that, sir.
Good question. I can add on some, one being is very important, which was left like Professor Om Sompura. He's belonged to the artisan family of Gujarat. So he's a artisan class. So he's having a traditional knowledge. But the question is that he is not having the good English and something. Dhaki and Kedeva. So Kedeva and Dhaki and B.S. Agarwal have promoted him and insist him try to just write a book and compile the experiences. So Prabhasankar Sompura have published one good book, and Silparatna. So that was the contribution of the Parnama translated in Gujarati, and later on this transcription was there published in the Hindi also. So this contribution of Prabhasankar Om Sompura was great, and he was the person behind the designing of the temple of Somnathpur. So after that, in Western India was Sompura have contributed, but in South India, Subramaniam have contributed, as Vinayak have contributed. The Subramaniam have published many books and continued the studies of the Chola temple and Pandyan temples. But in our modern scholars, if you see, the Adam Hardy is one of the person who's the one of the most important scholar who has worked on the Samrangala Sutradhara, and his studies is very much focused. He published one very famous book, The Temples of India, and that is because his studies was. He carried out various projects in the central India, focusing studying the temples which was described in Samrangala Sutradhara. Then Adam Hardy, being in a profession of architect, he was having this kind of acumen to understand the minute peculiarities and try to translate the verses again in the kind of in form of drawing. So because being an architect, he had judiciously made this possible and try to find out the temples, and his contribution is great because his work on Samrangala Sutradhara, especially focusing on studies of the Bhoja temple, Bhojpur, he tried to find out and calculate the elevation of the temple according to the Talmana of the temple styles or iconometry of the temple. So that was very much possibility. This was the Bhojeshwar temple of Bhojpur was taller than the Bhadeshwar temple of Tanjavur. And after Dhaki, I think the scholars from various universities are working in this field, and presently the various universities and the ASI is also TSP is working in South Indian TSP is working, but mostly work is focused on the documentation part of the dynastic temples or the regional temples which were left incomplete or undocumented. So our work is focused on much on the documentation and survey of the temples as present now.
It's very enchanting. It's very great to know all this. Now, in fact, before I sum up, I would like to ask, how you think that, we can take the temple studies ahead? First is, identifying the North Indian and the South Indian styles, and also, typography of the styles, and also, innovating further the temples what we have all over India, all across, with also various kind of materials. And third point is that, again, redocumenting and start forming an encyclopedia, the great work which has been done by that of Meister along with that Emil Happy. You want to reformulate that?
As of a very good question is that how we have to continue our temple studies, because India is a vast country. We need because we are gradually losing our this priceless built heritage, because due to the population explosion and the rapid urbanization, these temples have gone and actually engulfed in the populated area or modern habitation. So now the documentation is one of the process. We have to prepare the inventory or inventory of these temples and prepare the illustrated catalog of these temples. But as so far the temple studies is concerned, right from the beginning, we can just, I will go back again, because earlier the temple studies was focused on that the documentation. Again, they have given the nomenclature based on the dynastic affiliation, like a Patihara temple, Chola temple, and like a Chandila temple, or in the North Indian Kashmiri temple, and this and that. But that was the time when the S.K. Saraswati, and Ghosh, and P.K. Acharya, they have even emphasized this dynastic nomenclature should be abolished, and we have to go for the nomenclature which is used in our Vastu Shastras, especially when we have to see the Agni literature, and especially the Puranas are giving the series of the name of the temples, and especially Mansard had given a long list of the temples, which was very difficult to identify them. But the question is that the scholars are more emphasizing to identify the exact typology and the name to be adopted from the treatise which was written in our text. So that this was the one of the work we have to continue. So now the present scholars are focusing more and more and towards the given reinvent or reinterpret these temples, and documentation is the bigger part. So the classification of the temple is given on the basis of the new nomenclature, which is on the treatise, based on the treatise. So like Nagara and Vesara. And each Nagara had the further sub-classification of the temples, like Nagarekha Nagara, Nagara Bhumija. Now, Bhumija, one of the style of Nagara style. The Nagara is a broad spectrum, broad umbrella. We have the 7 or 8 sub-classifications of the Nagara. Even though there Mansara has even the Napusaka style of temple. They have the various type of Napusaka temple. But the temple was also classified like male, female, and Napusaka. Even neither in the male or not a female. They are Napusaka. Amphophite. So these kind of temples were also classified. This nomenclature is available. So now the common man, we are not knowing the basic principle of the construction of the temple, but many more things available in our Shastras or Vastu Shastras. So it's a high time we have to go back and just study our text, what kind of classification in there. The modern temples are built randomly without any basic principles we are not adopting, and many more things are new things are added because it's a time because new things, new elements were incorporated in the original work. But the question is that we are gradually losing our traditional knowledge, which is very much explained or very much in detail is available in our text. So the modern scholars, especially, they should focus on the studies on the basis of the organicals, as well as we have to contribute and we have to try to find out the other aspect of the temple, basically not only the documentation. We have to go for the socio-economic aspect of the temples, and what is the political impact on the temples. So socio-economic and political aspect must be included in these temples. For example, if you see like Khajuraho temples, the Khajuraho is located in very remote and very dry area, that is was semi-dry and sandy area. So the location, because why the king have built this kind of grand temples in this forested land, because the capital was Khajuraho was the capital, but there was no royal palace as such, because the Kalinjar was about 55 kilometers from Khajuraho, which was known as the capital of the army capital, or the garrison was located there. But the question is that why the number of the hundreds of temple was built in one place? That has to be identified, the reason, and what is that? Because in construction we need a lot of money, resources. From where these rulers were collecting these resources? What is the reason, and what is the social impact on this? So that aspect to be seen, because everybody knows that temple was worked as like a social institutions. Like in South Indian temples were the epicenter of all the social activities. Mm-hmm. They were like an education institution, they are the social institution, their economic activities were performed all around the temple. So like Madurai was one of the examples, Tanjavur one of the examples, that these temples were located in the heart of the city. City was just habited all around the temple. So all activities are concentrated in the temple or within the temple or in the surrounding of the temple. But in North India, the picture is totally different. It is my perception that there is a basic difference in the South India and North India, especially the South Indian temples were working as institutions, but North Indian temples was not working as North South India, because many of the temples are located in very forested area, is with the Artemic region, and these forested Artemic regions were the center of the Saiva ascetics, and these Saiva ascetics are always keep away from the main society. So this is the basic conceptually difference between the South India and North India.
That's great, and it was a very enchanting discussion which has gone into the depth of the studies of the Indian temples and its architecture, its typology, and who all participated and who all were the legends we have. We have come to know a lot on that, and Sad has also given us very enchanting aspects, how it was being taken ahead and what can be done in terms of that, in terms of the development, in terms of understanding the socio-economic and the cultural aspects. In addition to it, Sad has also given the ideation that how the studies can be taken ahead, right? And it is our duty as a society, like government will function as according to their particular rules and regulations, and also particular their objectives. In addition to it, it is also our duty as an individual, from whoever soul has come from whatever field, to be aware of this particular aspects of our temple, which is so very connected with that of our social aspects, economic, and also cultural aspects, and even with the educational aspect. We need to restore it, we need to conserve it, at the same time be aware of it, and also promote ourselves of this great heritage to ourselves within India and also to the abroad. So thank you, sir, for giving us such an enchanting lecture. It was a very great knowing you,
Thank you.
and also great knowing the subject.
Thank you.
And it has been always a pleasure meeting you and talking to you.
Thanks.